The massive starship Grand Seeker drifted silently through the void at the edge of charted space. Its sleek hull gleamed under the distant light of unfamiliar stars. Inside the observation deck, 5 representatives of the Galactic Council stood, in a semicircle, their varied forms casting long shadows across the polished floor. "Captain Mord, are you certain your scanners are functioning correctly?" asked Counselor Vex, his blue scales shimmering as he leaned forward. "These readings suggest an artificial structure larger than a small moon." The captain, a tall, four-armed being with gray skin that matched her uniform, nodded firmly. "The readings are accurate, Counselor. Whatever lies ahead in the nebula cloud, it is definitely not natural." Counselor Drath tapped her clawed fingers against the console. Unlike the others, her species evolved in low-gravity environments, making her movements seem almost unnaturally graceful. "This sector has been unexplored for centuries. Perhaps we've stumbled upon the remains of one of the ancient civilizations from the pre-Council era." The observation deck fell silent as the Grand Seeker pushed through the last wisps of the purple nebula. What waited beyond made even the most composed council members gasp. Ships. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They floated in a perfect formation despite their obvious age. A massive fleet suspended in the emptiness of space like insects trapped in amber. The vessels varied in size and design, but all shared a certain angular quality that seemed crude compared to the flowing lines of modern galactic architecture. "Fascinating," whispered Trell, the science officer. Unlike the counselors who represented the dominant species of the galaxy, Trell came from a smaller world with fewer resources. His people, the Lurians, were known for their curiosity and innovative thinking rather than military might or political power. The arrangement suggests deliberate positioning, not random drift. Captain Mord magnified the image on the main screen. "Those ships have been here for a very long time. Look at the meteor impact patterns and radiation scoring." "Primitive design," Counselor Vex said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Look at those exposed propulsion systems and the crude weapon mounts. Whatever civilization built these clearly hadn't mastered basic principles of energy containment." Drath nodded in agreement. "The metal composition appears to be simple alloys, not even reinforced with quantum latticing. A single modern destroyer could likely eliminate this entire fleet." The council representatives began to laugh, their different vocal patterns creating an odd harmony of amusement. The very idea that such ancient vessels could once have been considered powerful seemed absurd to beings whose civilizations had mastered faster than light travel thousands of years ago. Only Trell remained silent, his 6 eyes narrowed in concentration as he studied the readings from his personal scanner. "Captain," he said finally, his voice cutting through the laughter, "request permission to assemble a research team and investigate the nearest vessel." Vex turned to him with surprise. "Why waste resources on these museum pieces? We should simply salvage what materials we can and continue our exploration mission." "With respect, Counselor," Trell replied, meeting the much larger being's gaze without flinching. "There are anomalies in these readings that I cannot explain. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Captain Mord considered this for a moment before nodding. "Assemble your team, Science Officer. You have 6 hours for preliminary investigation. These ships have waited centuries, perhaps millennia, to be discovered. They can wait a few more hours while we follow proper protocols." 3 hours later, Trell floated through the airless corridor of the ancient vessel, the magnetic boots of his environmental suit keeping him from drifting in the zero gravity. 2 research assistants followed behind him, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness of the dead ship. "The design is strange," said Lena, the engineering specialist. "The corridors are much wider than necessary and the doorways are all oversized. Perhaps the species that built these ships was physically larger than most council races," suggested Kodo, the xenobiologist. Trell shook his head inside his helmet. "That doesn't explain the inefficient use of space or the redundant systems. I'm detecting, look here." He pointed to an exposed section of wall where the metal had corroded away. 3 separate power conduits running in parallel. No modern designer would waste materials like that. They continued deeper into the ship, passing what appeared to be crew quarters and storage areas. Everything was built on a scale that suggested the original inhabitants were roughly the size of most humanoid species in the galaxy. Yet the design choices remained puzzling. "This looks like a control center," Trell said as they entered a large circular room dominated by what could only be command stations. Lena moved to what appeared to be the main console. Remarkable preservation. The vacuum of space prevented most oxidation, and the radiation shielding in this room is surprisingly effective. "Can you power it up?" Trell asked, his scientific curiosity overriding standard protocol. Lena hesitated. That would violate at least 3 council directives on handling unknown technology. "We're not activating weapon systems, just trying to access information," Trell countered. "If we return with nothing but speculation, the council will simply order the fleet scrapped for raw materials." After a moment's consideration, Lena nodded and began connecting her portable power unit to the ancient console. To everyone's surprise, lights immediately began flickering across the control panels. "That shouldn't be possible," Kodo whispered. "Any residual power should have dissipated centuries ago." Yet the evidence was undeniable as the ship around them hummed to life. Displays illuminated, showing strange symbols and diagrams that meant nothing to the research team. A holographic projection suddenly appeared above the central console, HUID, slowly rotating sphere with land masses and oceans clearly visible. Trell recognized it immediately. "That's Earth," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Home world of the humans." "Humans?" Lena asked, confusion evident in her voice. "But they're newcomers to the galactic community. Their civilization has only achieved faster than light travel in the last century." Before Trell could respond, the hologram changed, displaying a series of coordinates and what appeared to be a timestamp. Then throughout the massive ship, systems began activating one by one. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in red glow, and distant machinery rumbled to life. "We need to leave," Kodo said urgently. "Now." But Trell stood transfixed as a final message appeared on the main screen, now displaying recognizable galactic standard text. "Emergency beacon activated. Coordinates transmitted to Earth Command. Sleep mode disengaged. Awaiting further instructions." As alarms began to sound throughout the ship, one thing became absolutely clear to Trell. The ancient fleet that the Council had laughed at was far more than it appeared. And somehow, impossibly, it was connected to humanity. The game of the galaxy had just changed forever. News of the ancient fleet spread quickly through diplomatic channels. Within 3 standard days, representatives from Earth arrived at the edge of the nebula aboard their newest vessel, the Horizon. Though impressive by human standards, the Horizon looked small and basic compared to the Grand Seeker. Captain Mord and Counselor Vex waited in the docking bay as the airlock cycled open. The first human to step through was a tall woman with dark skin and silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was crisp and decorated with gold insignia that marked her as Fleet Admiral Taylor. Behind her came a shorter man with wild gray hair and thick glasses who carried several data tablets under his arm. "Admiral Taylor," Captain Mord said with a formal bow. "Welcome aboard the Grand Seeker. This is Counselor Vex of the Galactic Council." "Thank you for the welcome, Captain," Admiral Taylor replied with a nod. "This is Dr. Miller, our leading historian on pre-expansion technology." The captain gestured toward the hallway. "Science Officer Trell is waiting to brief you in the command center." He led the initial investigation of the ships. As they walked, Counselor Vex couldn't contain his curiosity. "We were quite surprised to discover the connection to Earth in these ancient vessels. Your people have only been part of the galactic community for a few decades. How could your civilization have built ships that have clearly been drifting for centuries?" Admiral Taylor's face remained neutral. "That's what we're here to find out, Counselor." In the command center, Trell had prepared a detailed holographic display of the ancient fleet. His 6 eyes lit up with excitement as the humans entered the room. "Admiral Doctor, I'm so pleased to meet you. The discovery is absolutely fascinating. The ships appear to be at least 700 years old based on radiation decay patterns, yet they contain technology that seems far beyond their apparent age." Dr. Miller adjusted his glasses as he studied the display. 700 years would place them during Earth's first colonial expansion period, before the Great Silence. The Great Silence? Trell asked. A dark period in our history, Admiral Taylor explained. About 600 years ago, Earth lost contact with all its early colonies. For nearly a century, humanity believed they were alone again. Records from that time are incomplete. Captain Mord frowned. That doesn't explain how primitive humans could build a fleet of this size and sophistication 7 centuries ago. Primitive? Dr. Miller raised an eyebrow. An interesting assumption, Captain. Admiral Taylor stepped closer to the holographic display. We'd like to visit the fleet immediately. Can your ship transport us there? 2 hours later, a shuttle from the Grand Seeker approached one of the largest vessels in the ancient fleet. Unlike their first visit, this time they were prepared. Engineers had set up temporary lighting throughout the main corridors and atmosphere. Generators created breathable air in the command center. Admiral Taylor stepped out of her environmental suit with practiced ease, her eyes scanning every detail of the ship's interior. Behind her, Dr. Miller muttered to himself as he took readings with several devices. The council representatives watched with growing confusion as the two humans became increasingly quiet and serious. Do you recognize the design? Trell asked. Finally breaking the uncomfortable silence, Admiral Taylor ran her hand along the edge of what appeared to be a tactical console. Yes. These are Vanguard-class vessels. They were thought to be theoretical, engineering concepts from before the Great Silence that were never actually built. But they were built, Dr. Miller said, his voice filled with wonder. And not just a few prototypes, an entire fleet. He touched a panel, and to everyone's surprise, it responded to his fingerprint, displaying a stream of data in an ancient, human language. How did you do that? Counselor Vex demanded. Genetic recognition technology, Dr. Miller explained without looking up. It's reading my DNA and confirming I'm human. Captain Mord exchanged a concerned look with Counselor Vex. I thought humans didn't develop genetic scanning technology until recently. According to official records, we didn't, Admiral Taylor said carefully. Dr. Miller's face suddenly paled as he read the information on the screen. Admiral, you need to see this. The Admiral moved to his side, her expression growing grave as she read. Are you certain? The ship's log is clear. Dr. Miller nodded. This isn't just any fleet. It's the 7th Defensive Armada, commanded by Admiral James Wright. They disappeared during the Battle of Orion's Belt. History recorded it as a catastrophic defeat. But it wasn't a defeat, Admiral Taylor finished. They jumped to safety. Much farther than any human ship was supposed to be capable of traveling. Trell moved closer, his scientific curiosity overwhelming his sense of protocol. What were they defending against? The two humans exchanged a long look before Admiral Taylor answered. According to our historical records, something called the Scourge, a hostile species that threatened early human expansion. Details were lost during the Great Silence, and many believed it was just a myth created to explain the loss of the colonies. This ship's logs will fill in many gaps in our history, Dr. Miller said, his fingers flying across the controls. But one thing is already clear. These ships were built for war, Captain Mord scoffed. War vessels? These outdated hulks? The weapon systems I observed were rudimentary at best. Our modern defensive systems would barely register them as threats. For the first time since boarding, Admiral Taylor smiled. But the expression held no warmth. You're making the same mistake the Scourge made, Captain. You're judging human technology by its appearance. She placed her hand on a seemingly blank wall, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a complex system of machinery that pulsed with a soft blue light. The council representatives stared in shock at technology that appeared far more advanced than anything on the ship so far, perhaps more advanced than their own. Humans have always had a particular philosophy about warfare, Admiral Taylor continued. We hide our strength. We build redundancies, and we never ever put all our capabilities on display. But these ships are ancient by your own admission, Counselor Vex protested. Surely your modern vessels are more advanced. Perhaps. Dr. Miller said, still reading from the ship's logs. Or perhaps there are reasons these designs were classified and supposedly never built. Perhaps there are technologies here that were too dangerous to acknowledge officially. A sudden beeping from the console caught everyone's attention. Dr. Miller's eyes widened as he read the new information. The fleet's central AI is online and has detected our presence. It's demanding authentication from the highest-ranking human, military officer. All eyes turned to Admiral Taylor, who stepped forward with a straight back and steady gaze. This is Fleet Admiral Emma Taylor of the United Earth Space Force. I request access to command protocols. The ship hummed around them as if considering her words. Then, one by one, displays throughout the command center lit up, showing status reports from hundreds of vessels throughout the ancient fleet. The log screen displayed a simple message: authentication. Accepted. Fleet command transferred. Awaiting orders, Admiral Taylor. The implication was clear to everyone in the room. The ancient fleet, the one the council representatives had laughed at, was awakening, and it now recognized a human as its commander. Counselor Vex's scales had turned a pale blue. Admiral, what exactly are these ships capable of? Admiral. Taylor's expression was unreadable as she surveyed the command center. I think we're all about to find out, Counselor. The news traveled faster than light-speed communication should allow. Within days, ships from across the galaxy gathered at the edge of the nebula. Research vessels, diplomatic shuttles, and thinly disguised military scouts. Everyone wanted to see the ancient human fleet that had suddenly become the most interesting discovery in decades. Aboard the flagship of the ancient armada, now identified as the Defiant, Admiral Taylor had established a temporary command post. The ship's systems had proven surprisingly easy to reactivate, with power levels rising steadily as self-repair protocols worked throughout the fleet. In what had once been the ship's main conference room, representatives from 12 major galactic powers sat around a large table. Most looked uncomfortable, their eyes darting around the room as if expecting the ancient ship to collapse around them at any moment. I still don't understand, said Ambassador Lorne of the Paxian Confederation, his tentacle-like appendages twitching nervously. Your historical records claim human civilization only developed faster than light travel 120 years ago. Yet these ships are undeniably over 700 years old. Admiral Taylor stood at the head of the table, her posture rigid and formal. What I'm about to share is information that, until now, was known only to the highest levels of Earth's government. She paused, letting her words sink in. Humanity's official technological timeline is incomplete. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. You've been lying to the galactic community? Demanded Counselor Vex, his scales darkening with anger. Not lying, Dr. Miller corrected, adjusting his glasses. Strategic omission. There's a difference. Admiral Taylor activated a holographic display above the table. It showed Earth as it might have appeared 7 centuries ago. Less advanced than present day, but clearly not the primitive world most histories described. During what we now call the First Expansion Era, humanity developed faster than light technology much earlier than we've acknowledged publicly. We established colonies on 27 worlds across 3 star systems. Images of these colonies appeared, bustling settlements with technology that, while old by current standards, was far more advanced than what Earth was supposed to have possessed at that time. Our growth was rapid, perhaps too rapid, the Admiral continued, and it attracted attention. The hologram changed to show strange ships with organic-looking hulls, vessels that seemed to be part machine, part living creature. The Scourge. We never learned their true name or origin. They appeared without warning and attacked our outermost colony. When we sent ships to investigate, they were destroyed. When we sent diplomats, they were never heard from again. Dr. Miller stepped forward, his voice somber. What followed was the first interstellar war in human history, a conflict that nearly ended our species. The hologram displayed battle footage, human ships engaging with the strange organic vessels. The human ships were clearly outmatched in the early encounters, being destroyed by weapons that seemed to phase through their defenses. After losing 3 colonies and dozens of ships, Admiral Taylor continued, Humanity did what it has always done when faced with extinction. We adapted. We built this fleet, the 7th Defensive Armada. Ships designed with a single purpose: to survive long enough to win. Trell leaned forward, all 6 of his eyes focused on the display. But according to your history, humans retreated to Earth and lost contact with all colonies during the Great Silence. You said yourselves that records from that time are incomplete. They're incomplete because we made them that way, Dr. Miller said quietly. After the war, Earth's leadership made a decision to hide our true capabilities from future alien contacts. But why? Asked a reptilian diplomat from the outer systems. Admiral Taylor's expression was grim. Because the Scourge taught us a painful lesson. In the galaxy, the strong survive and the weak are conquered. We knew we would eventually encounter other advanced civilizations. We didn't know if they would be friends or enemies, so you pretended to be less advanced than you actually were, Captain Mord said slowly, understanding dawning on her face. You reintroduced technology gradually, appearing to develop it naturally. Precisely, Dr. Miller nodded. Earth deliberately isolated itself, cut contact with the surviving colonies, and rewrote its own history. When we were discovered faster than light travel 120 years ago, it was actually the public revelation of technology we had possessed for centuries. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These ships, Admiral Taylor gestured around them, represent humanity's true technological capabilities from 700 years ago. They were lost during the final battle with the Scourge. We believed they were destroyed performing a desperation tactic, a mass jump deeper into Scourge territory than any ship had gone before. A suicide mission, Trell whispered. Yes, the Admiral confirmed. One that apparently succeeded better than we knew. According to the ship logs Dr. Miller has recovered, they crippled the Scourge homeworld before escaping to this nebula. Damage sustained during the battle left them unable to navigate home, so they entered hibernation mode, programmed to await rediscovery. Counselor Vex stood suddenly, his scales now a deep purple, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. This is outrageous. You've deceived the entire galaxy. How do we know these ships aren't part of a human plan to dominate all other species? Admiral Taylor met his gaze calmly. If domination was our goal, Counselor, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We would have revealed our capabilities centuries ago and conquered while other civilizations were still developing space travel. If what you say about these ships is true, said Ambassador Lorne carefully, then they contain weapons technology far beyond what you've publicly acknowledged. We have treaties limiting military technology. Treaties based on false assumptions, Dr. Miller pointed out, and technology that is, by our standards, quite outdated. A tall, spindly diplomat who had been silent until now spoke up. You expect us to believe that these ancient vessels are outclassed by your modern ships? That strains credibility, Admiral. For the first time, Admiral Taylor smiled. I never said our modern ships were more advanced, Ambassador. I simply said this technology is outdated by our standards. What we've chosen to build since then is classified. The room erupted in raised voices and demands for clarity. Admiral Taylor let the chaos continue for several moments before raising her hand for silence. I understand your concerns. Truly I do. But consider our position. A young species discovers it's not alone in the universe when a hostile force attempts to wipe it out. Would your civilizations have acted differently? No one answered. These ships, she continued, represent both our history and a turning point in human relations with the galaxy. The Earth government has authorized me to be transparent about these vessels and to invite scientific and diplomatic teams to study them. Under proper supervision, of course. And their weapons systems? Captain Mord asked. Will remain dormant unless needed for defense, Admiral Taylor stated firmly. We have no hostile intentions toward any peaceful civilization. Dr. Miller activated another display showing the status of the fleet. We've managed to bring 237 ships back to operational status. The remaining vessels are too damaged to repair with our current resources. 237 warships, Counselor Vex muttered. Added to your existing fleet, this would make humans one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. They already were, Trell said quietly, but everyone heard him. They just didn't let anyone know it. Admiral Taylor turned to face the entire gathering. What happens next is up to all of us. Humanity is revealing a significant secret as a show of good faith. We believe the time for hiding is past. We want honest relationships with our galactic neighbors. And if we don't, trust you? Asked one of the ambassadors. That would be unfortunate, the Admiral replied, but understandable. Trust must be earned. We hope to earn yours. As the meeting continued, Trell slipped away and found himself wandering through the corridors of the ancient vessel. The more he explored, the more he realized how truly remarkable these ships were. What appeared to be simple metal bulkheads contained layers of technology that his scanners could barely comprehend. Systems that seemed primitive at first glance revealed surprising complexity when examined more closely. He rounded a corner and almost bumped into Dr. Miller, who was studying a panel of circuitry exposed by a removed wall section. Fascinating design, isn't it? The human asked without looking up. Beyond fascinating, Trell admitted. I've studied ships from dozens of civilizations, and I've never seen anything quite like this. It looks simple, almost crude from the outside, but underneath. That's humanity in a nutshell, Dr. Miller chuckled. Never judge us by our appearance. Trell hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering him since the meeting. Is Admiral Taylor telling the truth? Are your modern ships even more advanced than these? Dr. Miller finally looked up, his eyes twinkling behind his glasses. What do you think? Before Trell could answer, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. Red emergency lights began flashing in the corridors. What's happening? Trell asked, suddenly afraid. Dr. Miller's expression turned serious as he checked his communication device. The fleet's long-range sensors have detected something approaching. Something big. Another ship? No, the human historian said grimly. According to these readings, it's a fleet, and their energy signatures match those in the historical records. Trell's heart seemed to stop beating for a moment. You don't mean... I'm afraid so. Dr. Miller nodded, already hurrying back toward the command center. The Scourge. They're not as extinct as we thought. As they ran through the corridors of the ancient ship, Trell realized the galaxy was about to discover exactly what human military technology was capable of, whether they were ready for that knowledge or not. Chaos erupted in the command center of the Defiant as Admiral Taylor took control of the situation. The diplomatic representatives were shouting questions and demands, their earlier skepticism replaced by naked fear. Silence, the Admiral commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. We have a potential hostile force approaching. I need this room cleared of all non-essential personnel immediately. Captain Mord stepped forward. The Grand Seeker has advanced sensors. We should return to our ship and coordinate. There's no time, Admiral Taylor interrupted. The Scourge vessels will be within attack range in less than 30 minutes. Your ship is impressive, Captain, but it's not built for combat. And these ancient relics are? Counselor Vex asked, his scales, now pale with fear. Admiral Taylor's eyes narrowed. These relics were specifically designed to fight the Scourge. They're our best chance. Trell, who had arrived with Dr. Miller, spoke up. The counselor is right to be concerned, Admiral. According to your own admission, these ships have been dormant for centuries. Can they even fly, let alone fight? There's only one way to find out, the Admiral replied grimly. She turned to Dr. Miller. What's the status of the fleet? The historian was studying the main tactical display, which showed a massive swarm of red dots approaching their position. 237 ships report ready status, though I doubt their crews would agree if they were here. Crews? Ambassador Lorne asked. These ships have no crews. Dr. Miller smiled thinly. That's about to change. He looked at Admiral Taylor. You're thinking what I'm thinking? She nodded. Open a channel to the horizon. Within moments, the face of a young human officer appeared on the main screen. Admiral, we've detected multiple unknown vessels approaching your position. Should we prepare for emergency evacuation? Negative, Commander. Prepare boarding parties. Instead, I want every available officer and crew member ready for immediate transfer to the 7th Fleet vessels. The commander's eyes widened. Ma'am, we only have 300 personnel aboard. I'm aware, Commander. Each boarding party will consist of minimum skeleton crews, just enough to handle essential functions. The ship's automated systems will handle the rest. After the commander acknowledged his orders, Admiral Taylor turned to the stunned diplomatic delegation. I recommend you all return to your vessels immediately and withdraw to a safe distance. You can't be serious, Captain, Mord said. You intend to face an unknown enemy fleet with a handful of untrained crews operating ships that haven't moved in 7 centuries? Admiral Taylor's expression was resolute. These ships were built by humans, Captain. They were designed to operate with minimal crews in emergency situations. And as for training, she tapped a few controls on the nearest console, bringing up schematics of the fleet. These vessels use standardized control systems. Any Earth officer with basic fleet training can operate them. It's still madness, Counselor Vex insisted. Even if you can operate these vessels, you're outnumbered at least 3 to 1 according to those sensor readings. For the first time, Admiral Taylor smiled, a predatory expression that made several of the diplomats step back involuntarily. Numbers aren't everything in warfare, Counselor. Sometimes it's about having the right tools for the job. 20 minutes later, Trell found himself aboard the Grand Seeker alongside Captain Mord and the other diplomatic representatives. Despite Admiral Taylor's recommendation, he had requested permission to remain and observe. To his surprise, she had granted it, assigning him to monitor communications from the relative safety of the Council vessel. Through the main viewport, Trell watched as the ancient human ships began to move. It started with the Defiant, its massive engines glowing with blue fire as it pulled away from its centuries-long resting place. One by one, other vessels followed, thrusters firing in sequence as they formed up into an organized battle formation. Remarkable, Captain Mord murmured beside him. They actually got them flying. Look at the formation, said one of the tactical officers. It's a defensive screen, with their larger vessels positioned to protect the smaller ones. Counselor Vex snorted. A futile gesture. Those obsolete ships won't last 5 minutes against modern weapons. The Scourge don't use modern weapons, Counselor, Trell replied, remembering what he had learned from Dr. Miller. They use biological technology, organic weapons that adapt to their targets. Conventional shields are often ineffective. How do you know so much about them? Vex demanded. I listen, Trell said simply. The communication console beeped and Trell hurried to answer it. Admiral Taylor's face appeared on the screen, now wearing a helmet with a heads-up display visible on its transparent visor. Science Officer Trell, I want the Grand Seeker to maintain its current position as observation post. Record everything you see. This may be the only chance the galaxy gets to witness Scourge combat tactics. Admiral, Captain Mord interrupted, leaning into view. My ship has defensive capabilities. We can assist. Negative, Captain. Your ship wasn't designed to face these enemies. Stay back and stay safe. That's an order. As the communication ended, the tactical officer called out. The unknown fleet has entered visual range. The main screen shifted to show the approaching vessels. Unlike the angular metallic human ships, these were curved and irregular, looking more like gigantic deep-sea creatures than spacecraft. Their hulls pulsed with strange bioluminescent patterns, and long tendrils trailed behind them like the tentacles of jellyfish. By the first stars, whispered Captain Mord. What are those things? The Scourge, Trell answered, feeling a chill run down his spine. Just as the humans described them, the alien vessels accelerated suddenly, spreading out into an attack formation. In response, the human fleet began to move as well, but not in the way Trell expected. Instead of advancing to meet the threat head-on, the ancient ships appeared, to be retreating, pulling back deeper into the nebula. They're running away? Counselor Vex said incredulously. After all that talk about their superior technology? Captain Mord shook her head. No, they're not retreating. Look more closely. Indeed, as Trell watched, he realized the human fleet was moving with purpose. drawing the Scourge vessels into the denser regions of the nebula, where visibility was reduced by swirling clouds of cosmic dust. They're using the environment to their advantage, the tactical officer noted with professional appreciation, limiting the enemy's numerical advantage by constricting the battlefield. The first exchanges of fire were barely visible through the nebula clouds, flashes of energy and strange organic projectiles that seemed to writhe through space toward their targets. To everyone's surprise, the ancient human vessels weren't immediately destroyed. Their hulls glowed with previously unseen energy fields that absorbed or deflected the Scourge attacks. Impossible, Counselor Vex muttered. Those ships shouldn't have shields that advanced. A massive explosion lit up the nebula as one of the Scourge vessels erupted into organic debris. Then another. And another. They're winning, Trell said, in disbelief. Captain Mord leaned forward, her expression intense. No, Science Officer, they're not just winning, they're hunting. As the battle raged on, hidden partly by the nebula's dust clouds, it became increasingly clear that the ancient fleet, the one that had been mocked as outdated relics, was systematically destroying the Scourge vessels with terrifying efficiency. The human ships moved with unexpected agility, their weapons penetrating the organic hulls of their enemies with surgical precision. The Scourge are retreating, called out the tactical officer. Sure enough, the surviving alien vessels were pulling away, abandoning their attack formation and fleeing back toward open space. Trell felt a strange mixture of relief and awe. The ancient human fleet, ships that had been laughed at just days ago, had just defeated a numerically superior force of enemies that had once nearly wiped out humanity. As the Defiant emerged from the nebula, its hull scorched but intact, Trell realized something fundamental had changed in the galaxy's balance of power. No one would laugh at human technology again. 3 days after the battle, representatives from 27 galactic powers gathered in the massive hangar bay of the Defiant. The space had been converted into an impromptu conference hall with the damaged hull of a captured Scourge vessel serving as a backdrop, a silent reminder of the threat that still existed. Admiral Taylor stood on a raised platform, looking out at the assembled diplomats. The skepticism and condescension that had marked earlier meetings was gone, replaced by expressions ranging from respect to thinly veiled fear. What you witnessed 3 days ago was not a final victory, she began without preamble. The Scourge fleet we defeated was merely a scouting force, the first wave of what our intelligence suggests is a much larger invasion. Murmurs spread through the gathered representatives. For 700 years we believed the Scourge had been defeated, crippled, by this very fleet's attack on their homeworld. We were wrong. They were rebuilding, evolving, preparing. Captain Mord raised a hand. If what you say is true, Admiral, then the entire galaxy faces an unprecedented threat. Why did humans keep this knowledge to themselves? Even if you hid your true technological capabilities, surely warning the galactic community about the Scourge would have been the responsible action. Would you have believed us, Captain? Dr. Miller asked from his position beside the Admiral. Without proof? Or would Earth have been dismissed as a paranoid young species trying to gain importance through fear-mongering? The silence that followed was answer enough. Regardless, Admiral Taylor continued, the situation has changed. The Scourge know we're here, and they know we have weapons effective against them. They will return in greater numbers, and they will be prepared for our old tactics. Then we're doomed, muttered one of the ambassadors. Admiral Taylor's expression hardened. No, we're not. Humanity has been preparing for this possibility for centuries. The hidden technology in these ships, the technology you all dismissed as primitive, was just the beginning. She activated a holographic display showing the ancient fleet in formation. These vessels contained design principles and weapons systems that were revolutionary 700 years ago. But they're not our most advanced technology, not by several centuries of development. You've been holding back, Counselor Vex realized. Aloud. Of course we have, Admiral Taylor replied without apology. Wouldn't you if your first introduction to galactic civilization had been attempted genocide? Trell stepped forward from where he had been observing. The Scourge weapons were ineffective against your ship's defenses. How is that possible? Their biological technology is designed to adapt to conventional shields. Dr. Miller smiled. That's because our shields aren't conventional. The Seventh Fleet was built with phase-shift defensive systems, technology that exists partially out of normal space-time. You can't adapt to what you can't fully detect. And your weapons? Asked Captain Mord. They cut through the Scourge, biohulls like they were nothing. Dimensional displacement projectiles, the Admiral explained. They don't just impact the target, they briefly shift a small portion of it into another dimension, then return it. The molecular reintegration is messy. The technical explanations meant little to most of the diplomats, but the implications were clear. Humanity possessed military technology far beyond what they had previously revealed, perhaps beyond what any known civilization had achieved. Why show us this now? Asked Ambassador Lorne. Why reveal your secrets after keeping them hidden for centuries? Admiral Taylor's expression softened slightly. Because we can't fight the Scourge alone, not if they return with their full force. And because it's time for humanity to stop hiding. We want to be true partners in the galactic community, not pretenders hiding our capabilities out of fear. She gestured to the damaged Scourge ship. This enemy threatens all sentient life, not just humans. They consume, they adapt, they destroy. 700 years ago, we barely survived our encounter with them. Together, with combined technologies and resources, we can do more than survive. We can end the threat permanently. A tall, elegant diplomat from one of the elder races stood up. You speak of cooperation, Admiral, yet you've just revealed that humans have been deceiving the entire galaxy since first contact. How can we trust you now? Trust must be earned, Admiral Taylor acknowledged, echoing her words from days earlier. We're prepared to share our defensive technology with any civilization willing to join a mutual protection alliance. Not all of our technology, but enough to help defend against the Scourge. The room erupted in discussion, as representatives debated among themselves. Trell made his way through the crowd to where Dr. Miller stood examining data on a tablet. You knew this would happen, Trell said quietly. The battle, the revelation, all of it. This was planned. Dr. Miller glanced up. Not the battle itself, we truly thought the Scourge were defeated. But the revelation? The alliance offer? Yes. Earth's leadership has been preparing for this moment for decades. We knew we couldn't remain hidden forever, and we knew we'd need allies eventually. The lost fleet being discovered was the perfect opportunity, Trell realized. It accelerated our timeline, the historian admitted. But perhaps that's for the best, given the Scourge's return. Across the hangar, Admiral Taylor was now speaking, with Captain Mord and several other military officials from different species. Their conversation appeared intense but productive. What will happen now? Trell asked. Dr. Miller put down his tablet. That depends on how the galaxy responds. Some will embrace cooperation out of fear. Others will resist out of pride or distrust. But make no mistake, everything has changed. The balance of power, interspecies relations, technological development, nothing will be the same. As if to emphasize his point, the massive engines of the Defiant hummed to life, causing subtle vibrations throughout the hangar bay. Outside the viewports, other ships of the ancient fleet began powering up as well, their running lights creating constellations against the backdrop of space. Admiral Taylor mentioned that these ships aren't your most advanced technology, Trell said, watching the activity. What did she mean by that? Dr. Miller smiled mysteriously. Let's just say that if you found these old vessels impressive, you should see what we've built since then. Will we? Trell asked. I hope not, the historian replied seriously. Our most advanced weapons were built with the assumption that we might someday face extinction again. They're not meant for display or diplomacy. They're meant for survival at any cost, if we have to use them. He shook his head. Let's hope the alliance works instead. As the diplomatic discussions continued around them, the ancient fleet, once mocked as obsolete relics, formed up into a protective formation around the gathered diplomatic vessels. No one was laughing at them now. Instead, representatives from across the galaxy looked at these ships with new understanding and respect. Humans had built these vessels 7 centuries ago, when most thought they were barely capable of reaching their own moon. What else had they built since then? What other secrets were they still keeping? As Trell watched Admiral Taylor confidently directing her officers, he realized that humanity's deception had paradoxically made them the most trustworthy allies against the coming storm. They had faced extinction once and survived. They had prepared for centuries while others mocked their perceived primitive technology. And now, those who had laughed at the ancient fleet would follow where it led, into a future where humanity's true place in the galactic order was finally revealed.